can you hear us all and see us? I think the connection is stable and you all are able to hear us. Yes, that's great. So today, I'm Nandini. I'm your host for the day, and I hope you all are keeping well and safe. And especially, I would like to welcome you for this AMA where we are going to discuss about how do artists stay motivated to consistently produce new work. So, moving ahead, today's event is brought to you by Designhill, world's leading creative marketplace that caters to the creative needs of businesses and individuals alike who can source high quality designs from professional designers. Through its print on demand marketplace called Print Shop by Designhill, you can also buy 50 plus unique products with thousands of artworks created by a world class community of independent artists. So, moving ahead, let me introduce our speaker for today, for which I'm very much excited. It's JK. So, as you all, most of you have already, known her from her Instagram. So, she's a self-employed freelance illustrator and designer with a background in designing, media, and advertising. So now she has her own website, own studio, wannabe creative and creative wannabe, and if you have seen her artwork, you will see like how she gets inspired for creating such great artworks with such bright theme. So thank you so much, Jay, for taking out the time from your schedule and joining us today for this AMA.
No worries. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So we are pretty much excited, guys. I hope you have all your questions with you, and of course there will be a Q&A session that we will be taking up your questions. So make sure you write your questions in the questions tab. Before we start the session, let's quickly look at what Print Shop by Designhill is all about. So, all right, that was all about Print Shop by Designhill, and now we are all set to start the session. We will take up questions during the session. So, if you have any questions, please drop them in the questions tab on your screen, and we will take up from there. So, Jay, let's start with you. Please, give us a brief intro about you, how you started as an artist, and now you're at this great place in your career. So, please give us a brief introduction about your journey.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm Jay. So I suppose I've been creating for as long as I can remember. I was a really creative kid and I've always enjoyed the arts, and I wasn't totally sure where I was ever going to take it. But I sort of just, my entire life, I've just followed what I was interested in, which I don't know if my parents loved that, because when I was in high school, I would not do maths and I would do art instead. But it worked out well for me, and I ended up going and studying graphic design at TAFE, which is sort of like a technical college in Australia. And then after I studied it at a technical college, I moved on to university and I studied communication design there. Once I graduated there, I got my first job as a web designer, and I was there for a while. That was a really interesting job because we got thrown in the deep end, and I was managing my own clients basically straight away, which is something that's mostly unheard of in a lot of bigger sort of design roles. So I was very lucky to have, management experience really early on in my career. Once I finished up there, I went and worked in a media agency. So I was helping to plan and execute advertising campaigns. And then I went to another advertising agency as a graphic designer, and then that was where I started illustrating more professionally. I got a few opportunities while I was working there to start illustrating, which I loved, and it sort of sparked the idea for me going out on my own. And so then this year I've been freelancing on my own with my own studio, It's been a lot of fun. I have some really great clients, and I'm very lucky to work with some really cool people and have awesome opportunities like this. So yeah, that's how I got here in like a minute.
That's an interesting story actually, and moving ahead, as this session is all about how to be motivated, and considering the current scenario all over the world, it's like very much necessary. So thank you so much again, for doing this with us. And so moving ahead, as we all know, starting a creative art business is hard. And I'm sure starting any business is tougher than people expect. So staying curious, inspired, and motivated is essential, to keep moving forward. So combining a love of creativity with wanting to share thoughts where art is what derives artists on. That's what I feel. So, but there have been times when artists feel so challenged, So how to overcome these challenges that we face?
I think there are a few sort of ways we can go about that. One big thing that is important is trying to identify why you're at this particular point where you're struggling, because there's so many different reasons, particularly when you're starting out in a creative business or a creative industry. A lot of it can be imposter syndrome. You might not feel like you are professional enough or good enough to be doing the work, like you might not feel worthy of time and attention. I know I definitely felt that starting out, and I feel it every single new job I get. There's part of me that's like, why have you got this job? Like, who says you should be doing this work? So it can come down to imposter syndrome. It can come down to burnout, which I know is so easy to happen when you're, especially working as a freelancer, or when you're working at a 9 to 5 and then freelancing on the side. It's so easy to burn yourself out, and that will impact your creativity. It can be taking on too many influences from other people within the creative community, which Instagram is such a big one for that. If you're just like constantly scrolling and looking at all of these amazing letterers and illustrators, it's very hard to sometimes separate your own work from that, and you get caught up in the trends. So I think for me, the number one step whenever I'm feeling creatively stuck is to try and work out why, and that will generally help me work out what it is that I need. If it's burnout, then you do actually need rest. Like there is, you can power through a lot, but if you're genuinely burnt out, then you should take a break. But with taking a break, I find that it's very easy to like say you'll take a break and then have that break stretch into like a 3-month break, and suddenly you feel like you're starting at square one again. So if you are going to take a break, to put like a hard deadline on it and say, I'm going to take a break for 2 weeks, and pencil it into your calendar that I'm going to start creating something again in 2 weeks. If it's imposter syndrome, I find that, and I had this a lot in the beginning of starting my Instagram, I really struggled with this. The biggest thing that helped me was I set myself like this hard personal rule that for 6 months or whatever, I was going to create something every day or every second day, and no matter what I created, I would have to post it, and I would have to leave it posted for like 24 hours. There's definitely plenty of times I've like made stuff, and then after the 24 hours, I've gone and archived it because I hated it and I thought it was terrible. But being able to get over that hump of thinking that you're doing bad work, the only way that you can get over that is to be putting it out there in the world and make it anyway, and just like post it and put your phone in another room and run away and make sure it's up live. Because eventually, after you post 100 pieces of work that you might not personally love or think is like as good as it should be, you sort of get over it. And you also sometimes are surprised and you find that other people find a lot of value in work that you might not have originally liked, and that starts to, I guess, separate you from your work. And it helps to develop the mindset of, my work is mine while I'm making it, and then once I put it out in the world, it's not mine anymore. It's up to other people to decide whether it's valuable or not. So yeah, I guess there are a couple of quick things.
So I think yeah, the approaches briefed us about, they are pretty much great, and they can be applied by anyone, not just artists. So I think you guys
Yeah.
are taking notes for this approach, because I really liked it, and I see a lot of people have joined us. So make sure, guys, take a screenshot of us, and post it on your Instagram stories, tagging us Designhill and JK. It's wanna be creative at on Instagram. So make sure you tag us, and we'll see how many of you attended the event. So moving ahead, my next question to you is, hours of energy and devotion go in with no guaranteed results when you're creating artwork, when you're starting out. So the building blocks takes time. Sometimes things flow, other time it's a struggle, and creating can be a lonely process unless you're surrounded by a creative community or people in journal. So and nowadays all of us are mostly working alone, so in isolation. So how to find a way not to feel alone while creating, and be happy and vibing with while creating.
Okay, that's really interesting because I have always found that I realize I always considered myself an introvert, and I never thought that, like, I create by myself. I actually don't really like other people being around when I'm creating because it's such a personal process. And when you're making something and you don't think it's that good, the last thing you want is for someone else to like be around you and potentially see it. So it was actually COVID and lockdown that made me realize that a lot of my inspiration doesn't come from necessarily being in a creative community, but just from being around other people. Like sometimes you'll overhear snippets of conversations, or you'll be having a conversation with your friend and it will trigger something in your mind that will help you create art. So I've always found personally that for me, creating comes from a wealth of like life, or a wealth of life experience, just getting out and experiencing things, because we create art based on the world around us. And that's, I think, the way that I found to make the most authentic art to myself. And so obviously that's hard in COVID. And so right now I'm personally really relying on, I guess, books and films, and I'm attending conferences, and I'm making sure to have video catch-ups with my friends and video call my family. And I'm trying to stay connected to the broader world around me. Like we're so lucky that if, like, in this world, if we're going to have to be isolated like we are, we can access like online concerts, we can go to lectures, we can still, you can watch fashion shows, you have everything at your fingertips. So I would advise you as much as possible to try and keep with the world around you, and not just necessarily all the bad news and all of that sort of stuff. Keep in with what else is moving and what else is fun, or look into history, or use this time to read old novels, stuff like that. But I would also say on that too, we're living in such an unprecedented time and such, I guess, sort of strange circumstances that, like, don't put pressure on yourself if you are struggling. I think that sometimes that pressure to be, at your best 10 out of 10 crushes your motivation more than anything else. It's that perfectionism, and it ties into that imposter syndrome. So it's okay at the moment if you make your art and it's based on the fact that you're tired and the fact that you're stressed and that things are uncertain and unsure. Art is, it's a way for us to express, and it's a way for us to connect. And at the moment, a lot of my art has actually been around, I've been feeling really burnt out from being at home. And so a lot of my art has become about resting and the importance of quiet time and downtime. And so I think that you just take whatever is going on with you at the moment and funnel that into your work, and know that it's okay if it's not super happy. It doesn't always have to be super happy. It's a reflection of human experience. But yeah, so I hope that helps. I think that, it's the pressure that causes a lot of problems for all of us.
So yeah, I totally understand, and like the way you said, like there are a lot of things, the inspiration generally doesn't comes from going out or meeting people. It's just the way you see the world and you want to see the world, and some other approaches that you said, like not to feel pressurized. So coming to the pressurizing point, my next question is, how to be careful of comparing yourself to the other successful artists, because as you see, a lot of people are staying home and a lot of people are creating a lot of great work. But yeah, again, if you are at we are connected to the whole community, and it creates a pressure that this person is creating but I'm not creating, and this his or her work is so great, but maybe I'm not up to the par. So how to deal with that?
I think that's That's a super tricky one. I'm not sure that you can ever completely get rid of that voice in your head that says there's so many other people out there. What's really important is to be able to identify your own personal niche. If you have the whole world of creativity around you, being able to identify a personal niche for you and have like, so for me, my work is very magical and it's a bit mystical and it's inspired by fairy tales and stuff like that. So having those key tenets, or for a lot of graphic designers, if your specialty is type, or if it's packaging, or if it's color, pick your thing that you focus on, and then the whole world of things that you can compare yourself to suddenly narrows, because you see, I look at amazing graphic designers who do really cool packaging and I'm like, that's amazing. But at the moment, I don't do packaging. So, I can't compare myself to them because it's completely different. So you sort of pick your niche. If it's really getting to you too much, limit your social media use, stay away from that. Look to other influencers that aren't in the graphic design world, because that, if you can't stop yourself comparing. And I think that the key is the more that you put out into the world and the more that you create and the more that you share of yourself, the more feedback you get and the more potential clients you get. And the more that happens, the more confident that you are in your own work, and suddenly the less it matters for everyone, what everyone else is doing. So I think you really just have to hone in on yourself and what you're doing, because it's like, it sounds self-centered, but you kind of have to be with your work. Is you can really only focus on yours, because otherwise it just kind of messes with your head.
Yeah, that's very true, and these are some great insights, because generally people, or artists in general, doesn't think about it, like how the brain functions, and when we take pressure on ourselves, how it just limits our creativity. So great tips. And moving ahead, like you said, just find that thing. So like we create, like you artists create a lot of artwork. Different clients has different requirements, but when you create something, and like you said in the starting, it's hard. Sometimes we feel like going through imposter syndrome, like how did I get this job, or this project. So how to, I think finding a purpose with that job is, we can help, but how to find that purpose, for the job or specific project.
I think that I'm a really big believer in goal settings, and I have, my yearly goals, I have my 5-year goals, I have my 3-month goals. Like, I am a goal addict. And so I think being able to identify your goals and where you want to be in 5 years can help give you purpose for your own job, particularly when, workplace is stressed, your boss is stressed, you are stressed, you're unsure. If you can sort of hone in and go, well, you know what, my goal right now is to spend a year at this job to get the experience to move on to this job, it gives you a personal sense of motivation that isn't dependent on anybody else or what anybody else says. So I think being really clear with your core values, maybe your current role is to help you expand your skill set into something you haven't done before, or perhaps your side hustle is there to reignite your creative spark because you're not feeling it at your day job. I think that you need to have a purpose for everything you do, because also creating is hard, and creating regularly is hard, and it's tiring and it's exhausting. And so you need to have a deeper purpose on those days when you don't want to make anything and you don't feel like it. You're not burnt out, you just don't feel like it. And so for me, particularly my last advertising job, I worked with an amazing team and I was very lucky, but I knew that I wanted to be an illustrator, and I knew that that was where my heart was at. And so that was my motivation. I was like, I had a deadline for when I was going to quit that job. And I was like, I need to have X, Y, Z lined up. I need to start having clients. I need to have a bit of an audience by the time this deadline comes, because otherwise I can't quit. And I'm like, that's not what I want. So that was the motivation at like midnight when I was exhausted and I had to get up the next day at 6. So you need to get really clear, and it needs to be something that matters to you, and like so deeply, like it almost feels not life or death. That's dramatic, but it almost feels a bit like life or death, because otherwise it's hard to motivate yourself, right? Like it has to be you know, really, really strong. So that's the key thing of like breaking down your goals, breaking down your motivation. If you hate your job, that's an amazing motivation to make something else and start something else. Or if you want a promotion at work, that's another great reason to be upskilling and working on yourself. Or if you want to stand out from other designers while focusing on your own work, because that's all you can focus on. Like, because if you want to stand out from other designers, essentially what you're saying is you want to be better, like you want to get better, so you need to upskill. That's a fantastic motivation for doing your own passion projects on the side and upskilling and learning and attending courses. So lay out your goals and map out your plan, and then break that down into timeframes and put a little bit of pressure on yourself. Don't burn yourself out. And that's why this like self-awareness is key, because you need to be able to logically identify, like, am I just tired, or like, can I not be bothered, or am I actually burnt out because I've done like 2 weeks of 12-hour days? Because that's like physical burnout. So you've got to be sort of smart about it too.
So I think, these are pretty great advices coming from you, and, especially why they are great, because, you practically, implemented them, in your life, and, we can see how great your work is, and, how great you're doing in your career after quitting your job. And I think that's what, these artists, or artists in general, how they do it. Like, they get a job, and they learn, and then they, open their own studios, and, start freelancing. So I think it's pretty much great. So moving ahead, as you said, like, the plans and, goal oriented process, which helps a lot. So my next question is, if you could suggest some tips for, self discipline and goal oriented process, which helps a lot. So what are some tips that you can share with us?
Oh, I think it just cut out. I don't know if I'm still live or not.
Oh,
But
yeah, yeah. I hope I'm audible. So did you hear my question? Because my internet is, shall I repeat?
perfect. I'm still live. Okay, cool. So I heard the bit up until tips on self-discipline. Oh, and building good habits. Okay, so I just saw that come through in the chat. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can definitely do that. So self-discipline, that's like, it's firstly, like, of course, it's not easy. And so, I think being very prepared and very, like, you need to know it's not easy, because otherwise you're sort of just setting yourself up to fail. So I guess my best tips are for me, or I guess I can only talk from my experience. So in building like my Instagram audience and starting to find clients, like I sort of mentioned earlier, one of my big things was for, 6 months or so, I was going to make something every single day, and I was going to post it every day, no matter what. And so that was a really big thing for me. And I found what actually helped me a lot with that was my partner. He was actually doing a similar challenge, and so we agreed together that we were both going to create art every day and would post it. And so it almost became a bit of a competition, because I'm a very competitive person, that he wouldn't miss a day, so I wouldn't miss a day. And so I was really tired, but I'd be like, no, he did it, I have to do it too. So if you can find some sort of accountability buddy, if it's your friend, or you're a mentor, or just basically anyone to hold you accountable. It could even be so much as you could announce to the Instagram audience you do have, or you could announce to your family on Facebook, and just be like, I'm going to do this challenge of a logo a day for a month, or I'm going to create packaging in 30 minutes for a week, like every single day. I think that doing something every day is key, honestly, even if it's only half an hour. Like, even that could be your challenge. I operate under personal challenges quite a lot. So even if it is, I'm gonna draw for 30 minutes every single day, and I'm not gonna miss it, and I don't care if it's 11:30 at night, like, I will draw every single day. I think that once you build that momentum, and once you've done it for 3 months every day, like, it becomes such a thing where you're like, I don't want to break this. I've done 90 days. I'm not going to wreck it because of something silly like being tired. It becomes a matter of personal pride. So I think telling other people, setting up systems to hold yourself accountable. Another great one is go and give whatever is a lot of money to you, or a lot of money, like say like $100 or something, like it's considerable amount of money that it would make you unhappy to lose it, to like a friend, and be like, hold on to this for a month, and if I don't complete this challenge, you get to keep it. And like, you will do that challenge, like you will get your money back. So I think it's about setting up creative little ways to either reward yourself for completing it. It could be, if I post every day for 3 months, I will buy myself something I really want. Or it could be a punishment sort of thing, like my friend gets $100. Or it could be a challenge, like I will post every day and my friend's posting every day, so I feel like I have to. So I think that once you start getting into that rhythm, like you need little tricks and tips to start you off. But once you get into a role, the momentum kind of picks up and it becomes a lot easier. It almost feels to me like I don't post every day now. I still draw every day. But it almost feels to me now, if I do have a day where I don't draw, that I'm like, something's missing. And I think that that's the point where you want to get to, where it's become so ingrained that if you don't do it, you feel odd. Because everyday practice and every day, at least in the beginning, everyday posting was, I think, the key fundamental, like that changed the game for me. Like I can't attribute or at least where I've gotten to now, so hopefully I have a long way to go, but where I am now, to daily practice. Like that is number one, and I don't think anything can really beat that. And that's why I also wanted to post every day, and that was my challenge, was because I wanted that real-time feedback, and I didn't want to just be creating and like putting it into the dark. I wanted to be putting it out there and being able to get feedback to adjust, like what do people like, what don't people like, and take that on board. So yeah, challenges, punishments, rewards for at least like 3 months, daily practice. And then once it becomes natural to you, it gets a lot easier. The start is always hard though.
So I totally agree with you, and thank you so much, first of all, for sharing these tips and tricks, because they were much required. And I think, yeah, you're very right, because because of course you cannot measure your performance in like a week when you start to do something for yourself.
No.
You have to at least stick for 3 months, at least 90 days, and then you can measure it, like how it's going for you and how much you have improved. So that's great. And I think it's, you have been speaking a lot, and throughout this time. And all right, I hope you guys are also enjoying the session. Before we move forward, I would like to give a quick shout out to Designhill for organizing this event. And let's take a quick break and keep this interesting conversation going on. So stay tuned. We'll be back to hear more from Jay. So we'll be back in 3 minutes only.
Perfect.
I've always been creative and always been an artist. As a young girl, I used to paint rocks and I used to sell them for $0.25 on the street. And I just fell in love with it. It just grew into a passion of mine. I started looking on the web and I came across Designhill, and they had a design contest to design a logo, and I entered it and I won. And I was like, oh, this is really great. I can pick and choose what type of logos or design projects I want to work on. And it allows me to be creative, keep my hands, with my tools and working. So it's kind of nice. It's really easy to use. You can scroll through the projects and there's sections that you could go by. It's really easy. There's a few clients who have come back to use the one-on-one projects. There's one client in particular, she owns a vintage shop, and I designed her logo, and she came back. She needed a design for a flyer, and she really liked the illustrations that I did for her, so she came back a couple of times with projects. I would recommend it, especially if you're a designer that's starting out and you want to learn from other designers, seasoned designers. It's a place to keep in the game and keep using your tools. It makes me feel great, and it kind of confirms that I should be doing this. And I love to see logos that I've designed out, and proud of that. And I think that the clients are so happy that their logo represents what they do and, you know, makes them look good. It's a collaboration. It's good for me, and it's definitely good for them.
So, all right, guys, we are back again, and so yeah, we are back again. So, let's start taking questions from the questions tab, because I think a lot of people have asked us so many questions, and I've been asking you a lot of questions. So, there's this one question which has 7 upvotes. Um, this is like actually related to the tutorials to improve art. So I'm gonna just read here. If you can read it here, what are the best websites that you know that can help us improve our art?
Oh, okay, so this one's really interesting, because I would advise anybody, particularly the earlier you are in your journey, the better, is to learn, like, improve your art, yes, but more importantly than that is to improve your business skills and your pitch skills and your presentation skills. So I have always found that, in my experience, it doesn't necessarily, like, of course you want to be a good designer and you want to be a good artist, but the way that you sell your ideas to people is infinitely more important than the way that you actually create it. That's why when we go out, we see, like, not the best designs out in the world, because people who are good sellers can get people to buy into their ideas, even if they're not the best they could be. So my number one resource for that would be The Futur, which is the futur.com. And Chris Do, he has like a series on YouTube which is all about business and pitching and selling your ideas and balancing, you know, all of the different design elements and how to talk to clients and get them to buy into your idea. So that one's really good. Obviously, like, Skillshare is fantastic. I've learned a lot of lettering skills and illustration skills from Skillshare, particularly Aaron Draplin's course and Gemma O'Brien's course. They're great, sort of, I guess, like, you don't necessarily realize, like, their courses seem simple from the outset, but they share so many tips and tricks in it that you just are like, oh, I never thought of that, but it makes so much sense. Who else do I really like? I think honestly, I think that they're my main ones, because in terms of improving your, if you're a graphic designer, I buy a lot of books. So I have a lot of biographies like Ken Cato's, just looking at my bookshelf, which is right there, John Contino's, a lot of different lettering books, like, again, Jessica Haish's, Martina Flor's, a lot of the main designers who you might look up to and recognize will generally have some sort of resource, whether it's a Skillshare course. So I don't necessarily go directly to a place to learn. I find the people that I personally admire and who I would like to emulate in my work, and then I'll go and buy their resources specifically. So I start with a person first rather than a particular thing. Obviously, Perfect on YouTube is amazing. That's a lot sort of easier, because you can sort of Google how to mask out some hair in Photoshop and you can find a wealth of answers. So my tip is always to start with the artist you admire and work your way down from there. But the future is my biggest one, because the things that you think about your art that aren't necessarily good, this is what I've found, are sort of the things that I think clients sometimes end up really liking, because they're often the things that make you unique. You know, your imperfections are what give you a distinctive style in a lot of cases. Like, some of my lettering's a bit wonky and my color choices are a bit different, but that's sort of the stuff that has now, I guess, in some ways become known to be mine. And that's why people hire me, and they'll send me screenshots of work that I wasn't even the biggest fan of, and they'll be like, can you make me something like this? So I wouldn't stress, like particularly if you're starting out and you're learning technical things like how to do things in Photoshop or Illustrator, absolutely YouTube is like your, but in terms of really
So, are you able to hear me? I hope you all can hear me. I just had a word with Jay, so she actually lost her internet connection and she'll join back soon. So just wait for a few seconds only. And are you guys enjoying the session? I mean, you can just let me know in the chat section and if you have anything to say.
I'm back.
Ah, she's back. Great, great.
Sorry, I'm back.
So yeah. So I think you answered your question because I also lost the internet connection at the same time you did. So moving ahead, yeah, there was some great
Yeah,
tips
yep. I
that,
was just gonna say.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I put because I noticed some chats, people asking about Christo in the future, so I've put both
Yeah,
of
yeah,
those
yeah.
into the chat. So if you
Mhm.
want to see spelling, it's there.
So no worries, no worries. Of course, I think Chris Joe and Future are big name in the industry now. The kind of value they've added in all of us lives, considering the any industry, to generate that entrepreneur spirit into you. So guys, no worries. We will be sharing their Instagram accounts as well in between the session, so you can follow them and reach out to them. So moving ahead, my next question to you is, I think I heard this. I read that one question, interesting question in the questions tab. So which has got a great number of upvotes. So it's asked by Eva, how do artists stay updated and adapt to the new changing trends? Few tips would be appreciated.
Totally. So I think that this is something to be sort of, I guess, careful of, because following trends, like you want your work to have a distinctive voice and you want it to be sort of, I guess, unique to you. So I think that, you can follow along with Pinterest and Instagram as your best friend in this sense, because you'll sort of be bombarded with trends. But I think whenever you're trying to take on a trend that you're seeing, to always try to consider how you can put part of your existing style as it currently is into it, because you don't want to be creating a replica of somebody else's work, because I think that sort of, the more distinct, the more unique you are, the more you can, I guess, sort of charge more for your work. And it's harder to be you. Like if you're trying to copy everybody else, then it's like, well, why wouldn't you necessarily go to somebody else? So you either kind of want to be unique, or you want to be like the best at something. So I think that, yeah, you can adapt by attempting trends or trying to copy, or like when I say copy, I mean copy a style, not copy someone's work. But you should always try to infuse a trend with something of yourself, like change it. So I'm trying to think of a trend that I've seen recently. Even like my Instagram feed lately has just been filled with repeating patterns. And I'm not necessarily a pattern artist, but I decided to have my own go at it the other day, and I did like this tiger pattern, but I decided to still make it my own by using colors that I use fairly regularly. I use my own personal illustration style, and I've seen tiger patterns before, like they look cool, but I also added in type. I think that just whatever the trend is, take it and move it, I guess, 3 steps away from everything you see, so that way you're not necessarily copying someone else. Obviously, if you're staying updated with like Christo in the future, and the new Skillshare tutorials and YouTube like design videos, you'll be in the loop with trends. So I think that it's more just how you adapt them to yourself.
Why we lost our connection. So, moving ahead, my next question for you is, at times we thought, considering the social era, where we are getting clients from social media, where we are, connecting with the community and other creatives in the world. So when we create something and we don't get likes on Instagram, because that plays a huge role also. People are considering the business mindset right now. People are watching the insights, they are looking at the likes and the number of shares, the engagement rate. So once you create an artwork and you put it out there, but it doesn't work, people you are not able to understand the response of your audience. So how to be okay with failing, because that kind of gives you a sinking emotion. So how to be okay with it?
Yes, I've definitely had this. There's been times, and I've put so much work into a piece, like I've stayed up all night working on something that I'm really happy with, and then I put it online and it just flops, and it's such, like, you almost feel like sick in your stomach. Like it's not a fun time. So I think that acknowledging that those feelings are normal it's really helpful. Like, it's okay. Like, you're not a failure if you feel rubbish. So don't stress about that. I think that this is what I was sort of saying a bit earlier about my like post and run mentality. So for quite a while I would post, or actually at the moment I have a scheduler, so I don't see when my stuff goes live, because I post, I've noticed a lot of my audience are American, and so I post at like 6 a.m. my time, so I actually miss it. So I think leaving your phone for like a solid day and not really looking at it and having really hard limits for that is helpful. And then when you go back to it later, being able to look at it critically and try to identify trends in your work. There's no point just looking at one piece that's flopped, because it could just be the algorithm, it could just be the time of day, it could, like, there's so many factors. Like, we don't know how the Instagram backend works. But I think that if you can look at all of your work over a 3-month period and see if there's trends in stuff that's really popular and stuff that's flopping consistently, you might notice that people are really drawn to your emotional work, or people are really drawn to your packaging, or people like when you break down logos. So I think being able to train yourself to have a critical eye and never looking at one piece as a failure in isolation really helps, because it might be a bigger trend, or it might just be that you posted at 6 p.m. instead of 6 a.m. and the algorithm didn't like that. But I did notice trends in my own work over time due to things failing, and now in some cases I can actually sort of predict it, and you sort of then get to a really interesting point where you're like, well, I don't think that this is going to be super popular, but I'm going to post it anyway because I like it and my feed is mine, and you have to feed the algorithm. Like, you have to keep posting content. So yeah, I think look for patterns. Don't look at one piece on its own ever. And when you post something, like, don't look at it for 12 hours.
So I think a lot of you have loved the post and run technique, because I really loved it. It's kind of fun. That don't look it for like it's for 24 hours. Just get back to it after 12, 13 hours, so that you can see the response, and you won't expect too much. You'll forget about it
Yeah.
eventually. So moving ahead, a lot of people have
Exactly.
asked us in the question sections also. the creative rut, the big creative rut. You have a project, you have a deadline, and but you're not able to think. You're stuck somewhere. You're not getting into that zone. So what's your strategy to come out of that creative rut, and if any suggestions or tips that you can share with us?
Totally. So creative ruts are so common. I feel like like once a week I feel like I'm in a creative rut. There's a few different ways that you can, or that I go about getting out of it. One is to take a break from your work. I find that if you're in a rut because say it's 3 p.m. and you've been working really hard on stuff all day, and like it's almost like your brain is just frazzled, you need to take a break. You need to go for a walk around the block. Like you need to, I know it's hard in COVID times, but particularly for me, like when the world was sort of normal, go out to a cafe, take an hour off, like let your mind decompress. It's just as important. Like that's why we have ideas come to us in the shower or right before we're sleeping, because our mind has a chance to relax. So if you're really struggling, giving yourself a bit of mental space is really helpful. So get away from it. If you like haven't started a project and the deadline's which I also know this feeling, and the deadline's coming up and you're like starting to panic, then like lean into that pressure, lean into that feeling of the deadline. I always think that the first like design or illustration is kind of like, imagine working with clay. Like you just start with this lump and you're like slowly peeling back layers, and it looks like rubbish for 80% of the time, and it's only like the last little bit where you can start seeing that it might look good. And so if you're having creative block because you haven't started, like you need to start. You need to know that it's going to be rubbish when you start. And I'll tell myself like, this is going to be terrible, like this is not going to look good for quite a while. But you start putting ideas down on paper and set a timer. Be like, I'm going to work for 20 minutes, no excuses, no nothing. I'm just going to force myself. It's not going to feel nice, but like self-discipline. I'm just going to do it. It's going to be trash. And then after that 20 minutes, you find that you're kind of in the groove a bit more and it's a little bit easier. Put on some music that you like or that energizes you, and just like start chipping away at that like lump of clay. And so I think setting those like 20-minute intervals can help with that too. So it just depends. If you're exhausted, get out, take a break. If you haven't started, like you need discipline. Like that's when self-discipline comes in, and you just have to like white knuckle your way through it.
So that's very true. The kind of things we face, and yeah, great approach. Like get out of the zone and just do something different. And of course, yeah, it's great. So I think let's take more questions from the questions tab, because people have been asking a lot of questions. So, Preet has a great question which I like. How to let go of fear or awkwardness when sharing your artwork online, and especially this is for, I think, for the budding artists who are coming into the industry. It's more for them.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think you like embrace it. I don't know at the moment a way of like not having fear, but I think that like courage is feeling the fear and acting in the face of it anyway. I heard a quote yesterday, I think, that was, it might have been like Will Smith or something, I don't know, but it was like, if you can't do it unafraid, then just do it scared. So I think if you can just own the fact that you're scared and you're beginning and you feel awkward, and post and run, like that was, and like I don't know if anybody has like read any of my captions, but particularly some of the earlier ones, I write pretty emotional captions sometimes and they ramble. And there would be times when like I feel very uncomfortable sharing what goes on in my head and that much of me. And so I would have to like give my phone, like turn my phone off or give it to somebody else or put it in a drawer. Like it's, again, post and run. Same with analytics, same with doing it. You have to, if you're starting out as well and you don't have like much of an audience, try to take a bit of comfort in that, because for me as well, like when I was starting out, it was a lot easier for me to sort of mentally justify and go, oh, I've only got like 50 followers. Who even cares? Like nobody cares. Like I would tell myself nobody cares, because that helped me get over it. So I think that hyping yourself up with pressure, or at least for me anyway, wasn't helpful. So if I was like, you know what, no one's going to see this anyway, so it's okay, that helps you get over the rut and you just like start posting. And then one day you sort of wake up and you're like, actually, a lot of people might see this, and there's pressure. So I think, you know, leaning into that stage, like be scared, put your phone in a drawer, set yourself challenges, like post and run, and you know, like take solace in the fact that at the moment, like you can be free. You can be free to post. Like you're not a prisoner to trends. You're not a prisoner to analytics. Like have some fun with it, because you know it's a great time for experimentation. So I guess try to flip your thinking as much as you can.
Again, a great approach, and I think because I'm thoroughly enjoying this session, and these tips are not just for artists in general. I think they are for each and every professional, because we go through the same thing, because it's creating art is your work, but our work is different. But again, your work needs creativity, not like us. But again, so Maria has one interesting question which I really like. What helps you increase your creativity? So it's kind of like a half question, half a question, but yeah, this the gist is there. Like we can understand it.
No, I love that. I find getting out in nature, for me personally, it's hard right now because we're in lockdown, but like I used to take a drive up to like one of our national forests and like sit in the national gardens. I'm really inspired by nature, so like going to the beach or going to it, like even going to the city and going to an art gallery or going to a movie, doing something that I don't do so often just to break me out of my routine. I find like watching a film that I wouldn't normally watch, or trying to pay attention to conversations around me instead of just having my headphones on. I think that routine can be it's very important for business and for like developing a following and for getting clients, but breaking up routine for me is always been the key to increasing my creativity or like getting out of a rut. Experimenting with other mediums. I've just started this actually. I'm not like a physical painter, so I just decided to challenge myself and buy some paint and like no expectations, just start painting again. So try different, like break it up. Don't do what you normally do. Find ways to break up your routine.
So again, I yeah, it's true. So moving ahead, I didn't know the how much time we've spent here. So it's around already 1 hour that we have been talking, and it's
Oh
pretty
yeah.
much great. Yeah, it's the great insights, great approaches are coming in. So thank you for doing this, and I think let's just take one more question, because people have a lot of questions. So I actually like two questions from here. So you were already answered it in your one of your answers before, but uh, Mr. Bhansali has one question. How can one stay focused on their work and deliver the best quality of work to their clients with the current situation of work from home, various technical changes, and emotional imbalance? Like, of course, the technical changes are true and emotional imbalance is true, because we are not able to distract ourselves, like we were discussing before this session. So, if you could just put some light on
Yeah, so this is hard. I think that you need to find, like, this is where you almost have to become a bit of a detective for yourself and what works for you, because what works for me might not necessarily work for you. But I would, when you're working, if you come out of a period of time like half an hour and you're like, I was so focused and I was so in the zone, take a note of what you were doing. Like take a note of the type of music you were listening to, or did you have a TV show in the background, or like note down the variables that actually happened, because then you can try to recreate that and see if that helps again. So I know for me, listening to certain types of music or putting on like a TV show that I've already seen on Netflix on my second screen sort of helps to tune out the background noise, or phone calls, or like, it's a bit harder, I suppose, if you have kids and stuff like that. I'm no expert at that, but I think, yeah, become a detective for yourself. Like, do you have tea on hand? Do you have, like, what is it that when you work well, like what is going on around you? And then try to recreate that as much as possible. In terms of technical challenges, I think that we're mostly pretty lucky in the sense that people are fairly understanding right now that like we're all working from home, and it's a different situation and it's hard. So I think, obviously if you're getting a video call, test your microphone, test your headphones beforehand. But I think that people are mostly okay with that, and don't be too hard on yourself if if the internet drops out. Like, people understand, people are kind. In terms of emotional imbalance, that's something I definitely have been feeling myself lately. And I think that number one is to like take the pressure off yourself to you don't have to be feeling your best. Like, it's okay. Like, the world is crazy right now. So it's, don't feel hard on yourself. Like, we can't expect ourselves to be performing at 10 out of 10. I think that the best thing that you can do is have a schedule. Like, try not to let things sort of creep up on you. And I think chip away at projects bit by bit so you aren't leaving them to the last second. But also be kind, take lots of breaks. Put on your favorite music, have lots of tea, like do those little things throughout the day that it takes to be able to get your work done. Like, you're not going to be useful to anybody if you just burn yourself out and don't move from your desk all day. Like, take care of yourself. Oh, actually, there is a quote, and I'm loving this quote lately, by Andy J. Pizza on Instagram. He's an illustrator, and he was saying, doing your most is not doing your best. Think about all the times that you have done your most in life, like really pushed and really like grinded. Like, chances are it wasn't your best work. So in your own mind, try to reframe your client work and how you're working as, I'm trying to do the best that I can. So if that means that you have to take breaks, take breaks. If that means you have to go outside for a walk every 2 hours, like, do that. Like, take care of yourself so that way you can do the best that you can. And if that means, like, if you're a freelancer, if that means having slightly less work on at the moment, or if that means, potentially talking to your manager and shifting deadlines around, like, we're here for quality, not quantity. So take care of yourself.
Thank you for sharing all these approaches. I love this. Especially, I love the two parts here. The one, the client one, they are also people. So, of course, yeah, you can talk to them and, make them aware of the situation. And you can take the live example. Like, we have faced issues with our internet connection, and you guys were patient enough to, wait for us. So, we totally understand it, and everybody does. You just have to ask for it, let them know let the other person know about it. And again, the Andy J Pizza is great. So as we've come to the end of I really don't want this session to end, guys. I would love to hear your feedback in the chat section while I'm speaking here. So moving ahead, also I would love to see your pictures on Instagram tagging us. Because that's what gonna help us in knowing, did you enjoy the session, how was it. So this brings us to the end of this wonderful session with JK, and this was indeed a value-packed session. So, although there is a lot more that we could have discussed, unfortunately, we are limited by time here. I hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed it. And once again, I would like to thank you, Jay, for taking out the time to be a part of this session.
Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been great.
Yeah. As we are, this is not where it ends actually. We have a lot of events coming up for artists, for designers, for businesses. And the next event we have is an online workshop on the magic of brush pen, thick and thin strokes. So make sure you attend it, because there will be some value added into your, and as Jay said, keep taking up courses, distract yourself, learn new things. So here we are to help you out. So if you guys are interested and haven't registered, go and register. Now we are putting the link in here. So moving ahead, just ending this session. Well, how was the feedback? How did you enjoy it? Because these people really loved you. If you read the comments in the chat section, they, as soon as I shared your Instagram handle, people went crazy and they totally loved it. So before we end this session, I would, and these people would also, love to hear one piece of advice that has been stick throughout your life, that you would share with us.
I think that this too shall pass. Like, that's such a cliche, but honestly, like, whatever you're feeling, whether it's like good or it's bad, if it's bad, it'll pass. So like, try not to get too hung up on it. And if it's good, it'll pass. So, you know, really like enjoy it and savor it. So I think that that applies to every stage. So I really try to make a conscious effort, no matter what stage of my career I'm in. If I'm a beginner, I try to enjoy it because nobody expects me to know everything. And I try to lean into it because, you know, I can experiment, I can have fun, and I can make mistakes. And then as I get like more professional, I start to enjoy that because I get to do cool talks like this and like come and meet people. And, you know, I think that lean into like whatever stage of life you're in and just sort of own it. That, and practically daily practice. Daily practice. Can't beat it, honestly.
Thank you so much for doing this with us today. And I hope you guys really learned something, because I myself learned a lot. And there were great approaches throughout the session, great practical knowledge, which helped us, relate with it. And of course, the topic was also great, the pain points we all were facing. So thank you again for, doing this and joining us today. And we hope for more such great session and joining you guys. So thank you so much for joining us today, you guys. It was great to have you all. And see you again in the workshop. I'll be there as your host, so you all are welcome, and just join them. And virtual hug to everybody. Just don't feel sad, don't feel too overwhelmed. You, and of course, if you have any issue, you can always reach out to us on our community accounts. And of course, if you have any work related issue, you can always reach out to Jay for tips and tricks. She'll be happy to help you out. Make sure you follow her on Instagram. So see you all. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.